the go live button on YouTube, then there's about a 20-second delay before you're actually live. And that's the recording on my computer.
Okay.
So, so Von Terence is not going to join us. I think for the rest of the session.
Okay.
And BJ, I'm not sure about. So anyway, I guess we'll give a few minutes, and we're looking for Gio and Kim. Is that everybody, I think?
And
Leone. Yes. So yeah. So let me keep my Facebook page open in case they are sending a message. So how's your week? How are you doing?
I'm doing okay. It's been busy with work.
Yeah.
It's almost over. Wow. The first weekend in February is almost over.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And I was hearing on the Rachel Maddow show last night, she was talking about all of these bomb threats happening at HBCUs. That's a different kind of way to start off Black History Month.
Right. And it's also reflect over the fact that we're not in this country not dealing with domestic terrorism.
Right.
At my university, we have a Black Cultural Center. We also had a bomb threat at the Black Cultural Center.
Really?
Yeah. So.
Wow.
I'm not dealing with this. Let me turn on some more light.
Okay. Yeah, it's really, just looks like things are getting worse and worse.
Right. Yeah.
So, I hope it doesn't come to civil war in America, but it happens.
I know.
We've been lucky, I guess, in our lifetime for several generations to have not had to have that experience, but other people have it, go through it all over the world all the time.
But the Southern Poverty Law Center has been tracking these bomb threats since either the mid 80s to the late 90s. Most of them have been at Black churches, the majority of them. But this has been going on since then. But it has not been reported. When in 2015, when the church was bombed, was it Emmanuel?
The AME Church in South Carolina.
Yes. And then that's when I started seeing reports that this has been a pattern. And then Southern Poverty Law Center has been, communicating with the FBI that this has been the reality of our lived experiences, our Black institutions, the significant ones, the churches have been threatened. Now it's the schools. And I'm sure there's been threats at Black churches.
Right. Right. We just haven't started hearing about it. I was listening to I don't know if it was today's episode, but an episode of Joe Madison's show, and he was trying to get on the preachers about, where are you? in terms of this voting rights situation. And a young preacher called up and said, it sounds like you're putting a big burden on the churches, which caused Joe Madison to basically snap on the young man. But, but it does, it is hard to see, what our response is, to all of these attacks and threats and, terrorism.
Exactly. And there might be some things going on in the local levels, but we're not knowing in our individual regions. And then also, the media chooses what they want to choose to highlight.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah, so it's very frustrating.
Yeah, it is. It really is.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's just, it's just hard for me to wrap my head around. I mean, difference is it's built into nature. We're not going to get rid of difference, So it just seems like that would be the thing that evolution calls on us to figure out. You may have heard about the thing going on with Whoopi Goldberg.
Oh, right.
Yeah, where she got suspended. But the issue was just, it was hard for me to understand. So she interprets it or words, the Holocaust differently from other people or from Anna Navarro. But it's a talk show, an opinion talk show.
Well, I'll share. I'm not gonna, since we're being recorded, I'm just gonna share my thoughts offline with you.
Okay. I understand. Gio.
Hey, ladies, how are you?
Hey, I'm good. How are you?
I'm okay. Dealing with this up and down weather. Crazy.
How is it there?
Oh, what's going on?
Well, today it was 61, but it's still freezing at night.
Oh. Well, you consider freezing?
30.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah. The real freezing.
Yeah. I was about to say, Gio's from the north.
Okay. Yeah, but I'm getting soft down here.
Yeah.
But wow, the Midwest is about, oh my goodness, you guys getting hit really bad.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm out in the West. I'm in the West, not the Midwest.
Okay.
Yeah, because Utah borders Nevada on the east.
Oh, okay, so you're missing this, so that's good.
Oh no, we actually had a snowstorm early this morning.
Oh.
And it's been cold, but the weather has been warm all last week and a few days this week. But this morning I woke up to snow. But it didn't last that long. The sun came out and melted it away.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah, I'm glad about that because I had a doctor's appointment and I was literally going to reschedule it because I did not want to drive in that because I've been out here 20 years. And in that time frame, I've had 5 accidents where people have banged into the back of my car.
Wow.
5 different times, 2 different cars.
That has happened
to me. So
are they not used to snow out there?
They are.
They these bad drivers, distracted driving.
But I'm the one driving slow
Uh-huh.
because I don't want to have an accident and people driving, banging into. They
Jeez.
have like 4-wheel drives, or I mean, not 4-wheel drive.
Mhm.
I can't speak to why they banging into the
Mhm.
They just
But,
bad
so
driving.
I was not going to go to my doctor's appointment because I said I don't want to experience this because it was, the roads were icy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, I take
dangerous.
public transportation, and I said no, it's too cold for that. And then I was like, I'll
Yeah.
take a cab, but then I said I still don't want to be walking in the cold just to get to the bill. So 2 hours later, the sun came out, and I said, okay, the roads, the salt, the people, transit folks came out and put the salt down, and I said, okay, I could do this. But I was driving slowly.
Uh-huh.
I was driving
Okay.
very slowly, and people were speeding past me. I said, I don't care.
Oh my goodness. I don't know if I'd gotten hit 5 times if I'd still be driving with people.
Exactly.
That sounds bad.
Yes.
Oh, but I'm glad
Wow.
you're okay though.
Oh, thank you.
That's
Thank you.
that's a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
All right. Well, it's 7:12, so maybe we should go on and get started. Geo Von Terrence is not going to join us for the rest of the group.
oh
So she wishes us well. She loves what we're doing here. But her schedule kind of whack.
okay. Well, I'm glad she was able to for at least, a brief period.
Right.
Yeah, participate. Maybe next time.
Right.
Right,
Yeah.
right,
All
right.
right.
Yeah.
Because I know,
And
I was gonna
huh?
say, I think Kim is not feeling well, so she's
Oh,
not
really?
gonna join us. Yeah, tonight.
Oh, okay. Okay. And BJ's not joining us tonight. And I haven't heard anything about Leonie, so we might be the crew. So maybe we should go ahead and get started. And I was thinking I might use this Zoom. Let me close down this. This Zoom has, Karen, when I was having trouble that first night and you were saying I needed to update Zoom.
Oh.
So I went to Zoom to try to do it, but I couldn't get to the update function, like where you log in. It just wasn't showing up for me. And I tried to connect to the chat person. That didn't work. And so I had just kind of given up on it. And then a few days later, it like automatically started updating by itself. And things have been better since then.
Oh, great.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so one of the things that came with this new update is various apps that are built into Zoom. And one of them is a timer.
Oh, okay, good.
So I was thinking, I might use it to try to keep us down to our 3 minutes and to get us back on track of getting out of here at 8:30. But I think if there are only 3 of us, we'll be okay. So I don't have to fool with all of that tonight. But it's nice to have it there, right?
Right.
Yeah, that's cool.
No, I may test it out just to get myself used to using it. Yeah. So, hello everyone, and welcome to the Global Black Feminist Reading Circle. I'm Michelle Odom. I'm located in Brooklyn, New York. We are reading The Love Songs of W.E.B. Du Bois by Honoré Fanon Jeffers. And tonight's chapter is called What is Best? Session 17 for the Global Black Feminist Reading Circle. And you can find us on Facebook and YouTube. And we have a website called readingchangeslives.wordpress.com. So with that, let's go around and introduce all the feminist conversationalists that are with us tonight. Karen?
Okay. Good evening. I'm Karen, and I am joining you from Salt Lake City with this. I want to show my bookmark. I had this for years. I love it.
Oh, how nice.
Nice.
And,
Nice.
This is my book. Okay.
And Gio.
Hey, good evening. I'm Georgette Moses, and I'm joining you guys from Columbia, South Carolina. And my book is digital, so I can't show it to you.
Okay. It's all right. It's all right. So, who wants to get us started? I guess one thing I want to say is should have included song 2 with this reading, right? Because the songs are starting the sections.
I thought we read that already.
We did. We read it last week. And that's why I'm saying it really should have been included with this week. Right. Yeah. But it's just a paragraph, so we can look at it again. And also, I did quite a few posts related to this chapter, and I also started creating posts out of the love songs. Okay. So I have one I can pull up on the screen. In fact, why don't we start with that? Let me share my screen. And let's see where we can put this. Okay. Song 2, I think it's on page 75. Self-realization is thus coming slowly, but surely to another of the world's great races. And they are today girding themselves to fight in the van of progress, not simply for their own rights as men, but for the ideas of the greater world in which they live, the emancipation of women, universal peace, democratic government, the socialization of wealth, and human brotherhood. And that's from Du Bois's Evolution of the Negro. So it makes, so I can see some of the ways that passage connects to this chapter, what is best, right. Which I would say the theme is desegregation, which we consider to be a type of progress. Okay. Okay, that's all I have for now. Okay.
So I would like to start. So what there are a number of things that resonated with me with regards to this chapter. And I'll just outline a few of them. So one of the things that really resonated with me is like I really appreciate the father and daughter relationship and the dynamics in which they have, and I'll expand on that in a minute. And then that does, and I'm glad that you did that song because it does ties into what is best. So I'm going to get into how I look at that. The other thing that I notice is Allie and how she's always seeming to struggle to fit in. Fitting in with regards to when she was attending the predominantly Black school to the predominantly white school. So it's always that her struggling to fit in. And the third thing that I noticed is, one second, is how the father uses what Pierre Bourdieu, who's a French sociologist, and we use this term in education also, uses his cultural capital to have power in society as a way to ensure that Allie gets what's best, if you will, as it relates to education. So I want to start with that one, the whole thing about cultural capital. So what I noticed, so Pierre Bourdieu, he was a French sociologist, and he coined this term called cultural capital, and it explains how power in society is transformed and how social classes, particularly the middle and upper class, are able to maintain that power. And so an example of that is the assets that a person has. So in the case of Ali's dad, his assets was his education, right? And then particularly his him being a medical doctor, okay? So that has high revere and prominence in the Black civil society or even white society. Being a medical doctor, people are saying, wow, this is impressive, right? And so he uses that in the previous chapter, that one of the previous chapters we read when she was in school. And he goes to the principal and negotiates a way to allow Allie not to be punished, but he uses his cultural capital as a medical doctor to ensure that she will still have access to a level of privilege, so she won't be punished by that. Unlike the young lady, I don't remember her name, the one who came from a low socioeconomic background.
Was it Antoinette?
Oh, Antoinette, that's right. Yeah. Did not have that social capital from her parents or even herself to negotiate, how can I not be punished by this fight? And so that's one of the things that I really saw this in this chapter, and I was reflecting on the father and saying, oh, he's using his social capital. And so you see that also with him placing her in this predominantly white school, using his social capital. And that comes with the money that he could pay for her to go to the school, to have access to the resources that white students have in those schools and the educational experiences that she can have, right? But oh, did you put a timer on? Because I have so much and I don't want to take away from Gio.
No, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Some of my time. Okay.
It's just three of us here. We can be free.
And so that's why I say her dad uses his cultural capital to ensure that, I had to write my notes so I wouldn't forget, that Allie is granted access to educational privileges that perhaps some students from low socioeconomic backgrounds do not have, right? Now, one of the other things that I was noticing is that, now let's look at Allie. And how Allie, the other thing that I was saying is that she's always struggling to belong. So in the predominantly Black school, she was struggling to try to belong. So she went along to get along in terms of being part of the mean girl crew, right? But then that backfires on her, right? Because she's not being real to herself in terms of how she's perpetuating a level of bullying internet as a way to give her some coins, if you will, to continue to be a part of that group. And so, but it does backfire. And then when she goes to the white school, because it's a predominantly white school, and where students hold on to their white privilege and assumptions of white superiority and Black inferiority, she's not fitting in with that. And so even though her parents, assuming that this is the best place for her educationally in terms of allowing her to have access to the resources and whatever else that comes with being in this highly privileged white environment, it does take a toll on her socially, because you have to understand that it's not just about accessing the knowledge, it's also the social interactions and the networks that students have to navigate in order to be successful. And then in reality, when you look at research on Black students in elite private schools that are predominantly white, one thing they consistently experience, they may have the knowledge, but they experience isolation. They experience racism. And those things that parents have to take into consideration when they send their kids to these schools. So it has to be, and that can impact, have an internal impact on the students in terms of either perhaps feeling imposter syndrome, do I belong here, etc., or am I inferior to these kids, or I don't feel comfortable. That can have a negative impact, research has revealed, on their academic schooling experiences. So that's part of the consequences that in terms of being in these kind of environments that these Black kids experience. And I have one more, but I don't know if I should let you, if Gio.
No, go on, give it to
The other thing that I want to talk about is me looking at Allie's relationships and the dynamics that she has between her father and also her mother. Whereas with her father, the thing that I liked about her father, and this is one thing that I like that Honoré does, is that I read a lot, but I don't recall reading a lot of literature that focus on real positive Black daughter, Black father relationships. And so I do, that resonates in this story. And one of the things that I noticed was with this is that the father, he respects Allie in terms of the intellect that she brings to the table, in terms of like how he was asking her questions. I want you to reflect on why you should go to this school, pros and cons, a predominantly white school. And so he respects her as somebody who is a thinking human being, as opposed to the mom seeing her, this is what you're going to do, and not respecting and understanding, well, this is a critical thinking human being. Who deserves the right to articulate her own pros and cons and why she should or should not go to that school. And so I really like that. And even when she got in trouble in the previous chapter with the father saying, I know you, you're this kind of person, and I blah, 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 blah. So he sees her from a different lens than what the mother was seeing her. The mother was seeing her as, I'm going to tell you what to do, or you too young to understand. And so that's one of the things that I really like, that kind of relationship, how that's resonating in this book. The father-daughter relationship, I feel, is very beautiful in terms of how it's coming through in this book. So I'll just stop there.
Wow.
Is there anything left to say? No, that was a beautiful description of the chapter, and I love your points. And I certainly agree with the school situation for Ailey and her, even her being isolated in both of those environments, you know, because of her class. You know, not trying to be too one or the other, but just trying to fit in. And then, you know, her mother decides, well, probably her mother and father decide, well, you know, where you were, you're not good. We, first of all, we don't want you getting into a bad situation. They're treating you unfairly, and that's not going to help you anyway. Where we want to see you, you know, what we want to see you achieve. So we're going to move you into this um, desegregation situation where we know you're going to experience some hardships, but look, there are already people. Coco's already been there, right? So it's not going to be that hard. It's not going to be as hard as Ruby Bridges had it. You know, these are rich, these are wealthy children, as if they wouldn't misbehave, also, right? So perhaps, you know, the cruelty would be on a different level, as she kind of hints at when uh, the guy, I forgot his name already, tells her, "Oh, you don't even care about what the, you know, the white folk, these honkies are saying behind your back," you
Yes.
know. So, and then there's the other piece where she tries to sit next to other Black students, and they get up and move, you know, as if, no, we're not together. You know, that other rejection, you hear, where she's come from a place where the rejection was based on something different, right? Did you fit in? Were you cool? Right? Were you popular? This is all about, you're just Black, you know, and I can't be seen being too Black with you. Like, two, you know, two Black
Mhm.
people together is a problem. That's a riot. It's not.
Mhm.
Right.
Um, and I love how you brought out the differences between the relationship she has, not only with her father and her mother, but then how it makes you wonder, well, what was the father's relationship with Lydia, as we look at, you know, how she was given, you know, room to fail, because they had, because of, you know, their cultural and financial position in society, she had room to fail,
Mm-hmm.
right? And her mother went and took care of her, you know, they had resources in order to take care of Lydia where she was, let her go to rehab and come back. And there was no, you know, problem. Only grandma had something to say about it all, right? Um, so I wonder, you know, just what the dad's relationship with Lydia was, you know,
Right.
besides just that, you know, come give me a hug, you know, you're my baby, you
Right.
know, and him feeling like, you know, well, he gave the dude a chance and he didn't take care of his baby. I know he probably on the inside wanted to go find Dante and beat him into a mud bowl,
Mm-hmm.
but you know, that's unbecoming of a doctor. Okay.
Right.
And
Mhm.
so, and throughout this chapter, I love the relationship you get to see between Lydia and Ailey, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and how um yeah, Lydia has overcome something. She made a bad choice, but her family was there, you're right, to hold her up. You know, so many people probably, you know, if she had it been a different generation, they might have just, you know, shipped her off, left her down south and let her stay with some aunts or something because she'd embarrass the family.
Mm-hmm.
But her family had the resources and, you know, just the mindset to, like, you know, things happen and we're going to bring her back and get her back on track because this is who we are.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mhm.
and the only other thing I can think of right now is that I love the references to different books and writings and art and artists
Mm-hmm.
in this piece. So I had to go look up some of their artwork and see what it looked like.
Oh, okay.
Mhm.
That's a good idea. Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess I would would add that along the lines of cultural capital, I kind of picked up on, I don't know if worship is the word I want to use, but I'm thinking about the scene when Belle, the mother, takes Ailey to the Braithwaite School for the enrollment application process. And, and she's like, don't you embarrass me, don't you say anything. And, as that even being a different kind of pressure of the desegregation period. I think some of us still, feel like we have to act a different way when we're around white people and when we're around Black people. And, so yeah, I saw a couple of, I can't remember what the other one was, but there were a couple of things in that chapter that just made me feel like, we've had this longing for whatever it is white folks have. And, but when you think about the differences, I mean, the white kids had much better food choices in their dining hall, not cafeteria. The teachers all went by their first names, which, I like a lot, but, I know for, particularly with Southern manners, that's a real issue. And I love the way that the teachers were engaging the students in thought-provoking discussions. And I know all of that is not happening at the public schools, particularly the predominantly Black public schools, where Black children are on the school to prison or school to, factory kind of pipelines. And so why wouldn't you use your cultural capital to position your child for better things? I guess I would say either we can use our cultural capital to try to improve our own communities, or we use it to, get into another community. I was just listening to a podcast, I don't know who it was, but this was actually the subject, where it was a young Black woman who's got some kind of project going on to encourage upwardly mobile Black people to stay in their communities of origin and bring all of that talent and skill and capacity to Black communities. Because once we disperse, it's not a good thing.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that's important, because when we look at history, well, first of all, when we look at history, for the most part, during a certain time frame, we were, I don't want to say forced, but what you found is that you had a mixture of classes. Black people, middle class, upper class, low income folks living in the same communities. And so in living in those same communities, we had our own institutions. children who went, particularly in the South, to segregated schools. The teachers knew their families. They attended the church. They may have run into them in the beauty parlor or the supermarket, etc. So there was a sense of, I know this family, I know their dreams and their hopes for their children. And so thus teachers, researchers revealed, at least the historical research that I do on Black educators revealed that it was a sense of their obligation and commitment to teaching these kids to be successful. And so I do. And so with integration, we lost all of that for the most part, because now the middle class or upper middle class Black folks were now able to be integrated in other communities outside their own. And so leaving them kind of like a brain drain, as well as a drain of resources in the community. And then with that also a sense of, we talked about uppity, we didn't use the word uppity, the word uppity is not used in this book, but I guess a snobbishy, being snobbish or being uppity in terms of how we view folks from a certain class background. And I think that was always there, and E. Franklin Frazier critiques that in his book, Black Bourgeoisie. And the other folks critique that. Anna Julia Cooper, who was a well-known educator, and I did a lot of research on her, she critiqued that in terms of how we Black folks viewed those from low-income backgrounds as if they're not worthy. Or at the same time, it was this back and forth actually. I'm here as a middle class educated person to uplift you, but sometimes some of our people came in with the assumption that that something is inherently wrong with you because of your class background. But with her father, so far we're not seeing that. We're not seeing this classist attitude from the father. Or from the mother. Well, what's it in the chapter?
His mother, Nana.
You see it from Nana, definitely. You definitely see it from Nana. And I guess she represents the people that E. Franklin Frazier writes in his piece, The Black Bourgeoisie, right? The snobbish person who think they're better than the community and who don't. And she's the kind of person, she does not talk about uplift, social uplift. She talks about, you know, her wanting to be around her kind of people, as opposed to, you know, let me engage in social and civic advocacies to help my community. Because what she fails to understand is that we're intertwined. We live in a white supremacist racist society, and that you think that you can survive just on your own or with people who are your kind of people, right? And not reach back and see that we are interrelated as a people, be it upper class, middle class, and low income. We all Black folks in a white supremacist nation, and that we should be obligated to uplift our people. Right? Because that's part of our survival.
Yeah. And to that point, Karen, Karen and I think we're talking about before you got here, Gio, the kind of state of bomb threats. Rachel Maddow last night was talking about, I think she said yesterday, 14 HBCUs had received bomb threats. And within the last couple of weeks, it has just been increasing in frequency at the HBCUs. And Karen was even saying they had an incident at her school. And talking about how long these threats really have been going on, that we don't hear about in the media, you know, and now it's like a fever pitch. But, you know, to Karen's point about we're interrelated, you know, that's an example of that. Yeah. Yeah.
one thing that I was noticing also in the book is, and so this definitely does take place during the post-civil rights era, right? And so even though, and so in this post-civil rights era, because it's the 80s, right? I believe
Yeah.
Yeah.
This chapter is like the mid 80s.
right,
Mhm.
and it's the 80s in the North, not in the South, right? And so what you still see remnants of highly stratified and segregated schools, right? Like the all black school, and which is reflective of what's happening today. Things haven't really changed that much. And whereas talking about integration, we see Ali's dad taking advantage of that, using his of okay, now we could integrate because it took some time in history. It reveals it took time, even though we had Brown versus Board of Education in 1954. And segregation impacted not just the Southern schools, but also nationwide because the racial segregation, the Plessy versus Ferguson 1896 segregation was a federal law that impacted the nationwide, not just the South, because then it's the law of the land, right? And so the fight to dismantle racial segregation in public schools, it took a long time to get there. Particularly in the South, because you saw a lot of resistance to that, white flight from schools, white folks starting private schools, pulling dollars from the schools, etc. But in the North, people don't talk about the fact that in the North, these schools also were segregated, and that racially stratified because number one was the Lord of the Land, but then also it may not have been de jure in terms of by the law, but it was de facto. But the point I'm trying to make is that, oh my God, I'm sorry, I just forgot what I said. This has been happening to me lately.
Wow, I understand. We get it. We get it. But you were talking about desegregation and how, it was a slow process. Right. And that the North was really just the Northern schools were just as segregated as the Southern schools.
Right. Yeah. And so what I think the point that I was trying to make is that even though Allie was in this predominantly white school, I think in the 80s, it was still at a point where perhaps these white kids were still trying to get used to Black kids being in that environment. But then again, I mean, that's a reality anyway. Absolutely. I mean, I think it was around 1980 that you had the Bakke case going on, which was fighting affirmative action at the college level, right? Let's see, I graduated college in 82. And, there was still a lot of segregation going on. Right. At all different levels. Yeah. Right. It's still going on. And then in reality, we still are dealing with that as well. In New York City public schools, yeah, one of the most highly segregated school system in the nation, right? And but I think the point I was trying to make is that even though you had this dismantling by law of segregated schools, it took a while before schools got to the point of attempting integration. And so this is how I'm looking at it. I'm using from the lens of historical educational history to look at also what ALE went through, is that these students were just not getting used to Black kids entering into those school environments. And that's part of the issue. Right. Because even the dynamic with Chris, who's got the white girlfriend, Amber,
you know, was an aspect of how far things had come
Right.
in the mid 80s, that they could kind of openly, date each other like that.
Right.
Yeah.
I was thinking that in terms of the mother, when I wrote this question, I wrote a couple questions down. Does it seem like, from what we read so far with regards to the mother, I'm just throwing this out to both of you all, does it seem like she has joy in her life? Are we getting that sense that she has joy in her life? And I think about that because I think about how she especially interacts with Ellie, and especially given the fact that the father works. They only see him 3 times. Ellie talks about how she only see him 3 times a week, and so then that means the burden of her of parenting is on her more so than the father.
Yeah. I don't know that joy, but joy is what comes through for me at this point. I mean, I'm thinking about the passage where after Ailey had realized that her mother was no longer going to be working as a school teacher, teaching third graders, Ailey was thinking to herself, well, yeah, I can understand why mom might rather stay home and wear her, gym clothes and read books that weren't written for third graders. But I think that women of that generation, that would be my mother's generation, still had a fairly strong, fairly traditional male-female roles, and a fairly strong sense of duty. My mother's one of those people that retired with hundreds of days. She was a school teacher, hundreds of days of unused sick time. Okay. Because she just did what she had to do, and in a, kind of soldier-like way. She still found ways to get in some joy, but I think her sense of responsibility superseded her quest for joy in her life. So that's kind of how I see Belle. Okay. And I could understand why Belle would retire. My mother at one point had a heart attack to break up a fight between some teenagers. So being a teacher, a public school teacher, especially in the predominantly Black schools, was not easy work. So I think, that's kind of how I see Belle, is just, her responsibility is to her family first and herself second. Maybe after Ailey, I think Ailey's the baby. Maybe after Ailey grows up and flies the coop, and and Belle is firmly retired, then she will be able to focus on joy.
Right.
Yeah. Well, in the earlier chapter, didn't she say, the mom say that she had to leave college because she was pregnant?
I thought that was Nana.
Was that Nana or was that Belle? I don't.
I
Don't
remember.
Cause
remember
she
that
they
part.
were like sitting at the dinner table. Lydia was there with Dante. They were all around the table,
Yeah,
and then the mom let slip something about, well, I had to, I could have finished college, but I had to have a baby, or something to
yeah,
that.
yeah. Or did her
So
sister-in-law say it? Yeah.
yeah, so I kind of have the feeling that she's got some unrequited, uh, self-realization going on there, because she always has to be the one to sacrifice, right? She's
Mhm.
got to hold it down at home because dad's working 2 gigs. Even though he's a doctor, he's, with a practice, he still has to work in the emergency room to
Mhm.
make ends meet, because of course they're not paying the black doctor the same rate as they're paying everybody else.
Mhm.
So, you know, and that, yes, that sense of duty to keep the family together, so he can, be the breadwinner without having to worry about it. So
Mhm.
yeah, that traditional kind of
Raising
role.
children, raising children is a lot. They have three,
Right.
you know, that's a lot.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So hopefully that's your joy.
I, I,
They're gonna take everything you got.
Yes. Uh-huh.
yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's putting a good face on it anyway.
Right. Yes. Uh-huh. Yeah. And
Yeah.
there's one part in the book, the young guy that Ailey meets at the new school. I forgot his name. I'm
Chris.
good at remembering the names. So I'm embarrassed.
That's okay. That's
Chris and
okay.
Amber and Ailey are in a trio.
And
Yeah.
I remember he said in the book that his father was a doctor as well,
Hmm.
Uh-huh.
and he said he doesn't see him that often. And I said, "Ooh, this will be juicy if his father was Ellie's father. That Ellie's father actually had a
Oh my
second
god.
family."
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, 3 times in the book.
Oh wow.
But actually,
Well, I don't know if that's where they're going with the story, but I do think that, another big theme of this chapter is secrets, family secrets,
right.
between keeping it secret from Nana that Lydia has disappeared,
Mhm.
to keeping it secret from Bailey that Lydia, wait, it's Lydia, right? Not Coco. Lydia
Right, Lydia.
was using drugs, and and Dante is in the wind. Uh,
Yeah.
they do have quite a bit, and now Ailey's got her own secrets that she's caught up in a love triangle. they got a lot of stuff going on. Yeah. So Matt, yeah, you're right, Karen. We may find out down the line that
It's not
Alien
unheard of.
and Chris are brother and sister.
That would be a really juicy twist to that. But I take in the what do you call it, the genealogy. I went to and I said,
Uh-huh.
let's see if he got another family, but he's not in there. The dad doesn't
He's
have
not in there.
but that
Okay,
would have
they.
been some really juicy stuff.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. No, but it just feels, to me it feels kind of like a typical Black family, middle class Black family. The
Mhm.
types of drama and issues deal with. Drug abuse was certainly a theme in my family. And my parents handled it well, I think kind of like these parents, as well as you can. It was not that generation that was just gonna, pretend like they don't see what's happening. They saw what was happening, But right now, Lydia has gone through drug rehab and, hopefully kicked it. But, we know in reality, it can take several trips to the drug rehab center before the problem is solved. Yeah. And in the meantime, it can do a whole lot of damage to family relationships. So at this point in the story, I think they're doing pretty good, with that.
Yeah, that was a fast drug rehab at 2 months. I guess she wasn't on the really hard stuff.
Yeah. We'll see how it goes though, because she may relapse.
Yeah.
I did read ahead, so.
Oh, no spoilers. Oh my goodness.
That's right, no spoilers. So, so what else? What is best? I do love all the references to books. Clearly, it's a family of readers. In fact, where is my reading to share with you? Let me see if I can find it. I did it as a post, but this is not that. This is my notes. This is on page 78 to 79. My mother wasn't much into art. She tended to use books as decoration instead. One wall of our living room was taken up by custom shelves. The former owners had installed them. And when the real estate agent had walked my mother through the house and she saw those shelves, she'd instantly put down a bed. And then there was a child's quilt that had been passed down in my mother's family that hung on my parents' bedroom wall. Its edges were tattered and its scattered stars had faded to an anonymous gray. So my mother had framed it and sealed it in glass. Okay, that's that part. And that description, my parents' home was just full of books and all kind of stuff. My mother was a pretty creative person, so she was a music teacher and she did a lot of arts and crafts kind of things and things with plants. And so the home I grew up in was just a sensory overload of stimulating materials, books, all the magazines, So that passage in the book reminded me of that kind of scene. And so some of the posts that I did related to this chapter are about book banning, because that is becoming a real hot issue these days. And of course, this chapter refers to the color purple. And that is a book that, that Alice Walker has been constantly beating back the trolls and the, since the book came out in the 1980s, right? But I love that reference. I loved all the references she was making to books and writers. And I think when you go back to song 2, talking about the van of progress, and the, what is it? Wrong button. Self-realization is thus coming slowly but surely to another of the world's great races, girding themselves to fight in the van of progress, at the emancipation of women and all of that. I think, if you think about how we were not allowed to read during the slavery years, by the time you get down to the 1980s, you're a little over 100 years out of slavery. And it just seems like between the Harlem Renaissance and onward, at least, it was such a period of intellectual stimulation for Black people. And, and a lot of that came through the love of reading and the prevalence of books. Plus, we didn't have the internet.
Right.
Yeah.
And then also, TV wasn't as, you didn't have as much choices in terms of what you were going to watch on TV. Because TV is indeed a distraction, right? And it does take away from reading and other kind of activities. So.
Yeah, that's true.
So this book banning, though, one of the podcasts I was listening to recently said that currently the Texas legislature has a list of 800 books that they are trying to ban in their schools. And, and for the most part, it's books dealing with race, gender, and sexuality. So I don't know. It's just we got so much stuff to fight on every front.
Yeah, the more things change, the more they stay the same, or rather, people try to dig their heels in to turn the clock back. I wish we had Nicole on. She could give us, because she's in Texas and she's in education.
Okay.
She could give us,
Right.
bird's eye view
Right.
about that situation.
What's going on down there? Yeah, it's pretty ugly though. Pretty ugly. So I'm glad I got to read The Color Purple.
I really enjoyed it. I loved the book. I did not like the movie because I felt that
okay.
I wish a Black woman had done the film as opposed to Spielberg, because from what I got from the book, I felt was not interpreted poetically and creatively as Alice Walker had written in the book. And I just felt so much stuff that was misunderstood. One of the things that I felt that was misunderstood in the film that you don't see in the book is the relationship. Again, I don't remember the characters. The Whoopi Goldberg character, is that Celie?
Miss Celie.
And then also the woman that she has a relationship,
Suge
Avery.
Oh yeah. Okay. And so in the book, what I got was Alice Walker was trying to portray a loving relationship with Suge, providing love and allowing Celie to understand herself as a woman, her body, and appreciating who she is, bringing out the essence of her, the beauty of her, and that there's sexual intimacy as well as a non-sexual intimacy was actually about helping her ground herself in her womanness, right? In who she is. Whereas in the film, it just focuses on, oh, next scene, we're just kissing, and then it's a sexual relationship. And I just felt that that missed the point. That wasn't the point. I think about the book Our Body, the book Our Body Ourselves. I felt that Sugar brought that to Celie,
Mhm.
because she did not have that from Mr. Mr. just objectified her. He abused her. He sexually abused her, verbally abused her, physically abused her. Where Sugar was saying, I'm trying to bring you into understanding who you are as a woman on all aspects of that, right?
Right.
On the level of the book, Our Body Ourselves.
Mhm.
That gets missed in the film. There was so many other stuff that I felt in this film did not.
Yeah, I mean, I think rarely is the film ever as good as the book. And, and that's one of the great values of reading and being a reader. Because you're not only, it just gives you time to reflect on what's really happening on the page and what you think about it, and what else you bring to it from your own experiences and perspectives, as opposed to a movie that's going boom 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 boom, and it's a stimulating experience to watch a movie, but it doesn't portray as thoughtfully as the book does, and it also doesn't give you time to really absorb all the things that are happening there. So yeah. Yeah, it's seldom that I say, "Oh, the movie, oh, that was so much better than the book." No.
No.
Yeah. What else do we get? What do you think about? How would you answer the question? What is best? What is she referring to with that question? What is best? And how would you answer the question?
Well, a number of things that I'm seeing is the father, again, like I said earlier, uses his cultural capital to gain access, or make sure that his daughter gain access to a highly resourced, predominantly white school, so that she can have the most, so she can have a better chance, if you will, in terms of education. Two, you see the mom giving up her work and her time, her family, to go to Atlanta and be with her daughter Lydia while she's in rehab, because for her, she's saying, making those sacrifices, it is what is best to ensure that Lydia gets the kind of help to help her be rehabbed, if you will, from the drug abuse. And so those two things really stood out to me with regards to that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I kind of saw it as a question of what is best integrated or integrated or segregated, both in terms of schools and in terms of love relationships. Even the little trio thing that Ailey's got going on with Chris. You know, we're at the end. She was admitting that she felt a little bit bad, you know, and her big sister was explaining to her, well, you know, you got all this going on and you don't have anything to be ashamed about. And you know, but you know, but it raises questions.
Mhm. Yeah. I think that's also reflected in when Ailey's talking to Lydia and she decides which secret she's going to share with her. She chooses the one that's best, she feels is best, which is Chris, the safe topic, and not how she was molested by Gandhi in the bathtub and he threatened to kill everybody if she told. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
those are kind of adult choices
Mm-hmm.
she's faced with through this journey.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Also, the school, the Braithways, teachers going by their first names, and you know, and the way they engage the students, like the first name thing, and you know, I mean, not so much I would say these days, but you know, I would say in my younger adult years, which were the 80s, um, the 80s, 90s, that it was always striking to me that usually when I met white people who had doctorate or some kind of, you know, usually a doctorate, they wanted to be called by their first name, you know, but it was more likely to be the Black folk that would say, I'm Dr. This, I'm Dr. That. And it just screamed insecurity. The white folks to me were screaming security, and the Black folks were screaming insecurity. And, you know, I mean, I understand that Black people have been, you know, held back from all of those opportunities. And we don't have the long history of having, you know, this long list of credentials. And we need to experience the pride and respect and all of that with all that we have accomplished. But it always seemed to me that for people who had been forced to call other people master, you know, had it built into our linguistics that we were the inferior, and you know, this white person we were talking to was our superior. It just always felt to me that when we were free of that, we would have wanted to nurture a sense of equality among each other, not a sense of I'm now superior to you because I have more education than you. So I like that Honorary Touch kind of touched on that in describing the relations in the school.
So my a couple of things, because I do want to respond to that, given that I do have a doctorate degree. I personally have my undergrad students refer to me as Dr. Johnson or Professor Johnson. I'm a little bit more lenient with my graduate students, because particularly the doctoral ones, because I know that they will become my colleagues, right? And then with my colleagues, I have them I prefer having them call me by my first name, especially in my department, but across the campus. So I'm not really into, oh, this is Dr. Johnson and blah, blah, blah. And so the reason why I have the undergrad students call me that, and particularly in the environment in which I am, first of all, I'm old enough to be their mama or probably even their grandmama. And I need to have them, they're used to a culture of referring to people by their first name. Culturally, in our culture, in African American culture, young folks don't do that. And for me, that's insulting. Okay. You 18, 19, 20 years old, and I don't know you. I want you to respect me as the educator in the classroom because they won't respect you. Okay. Because it's the racial dynamics, it's the gender dynamics. And then that's part of it in terms of sending me an email by my first name. And I say, my preferred name is Professor Johnson or Dr. Johnson. Okay. And I said, culturally, I'm used to that. Little kids in our community don't say, hey, Karen. Hey, my nickname is Cookie. Hey, Cookie. We say, you know what I'm saying? We say
Right.
Johnson or Auntie, whatever. Culturally,
Right.
that's culture.
Right. It's a very cultural thing. Yeah.
And so for me, I deal with that. But what I also notice is that, particularly at my university, is that I'm a little bit more lenient with my graduate students, like I said before, but I noticed that the students of color will call me Dr. Johnson, right? And because they too, when I say students of color, I'm talking about not only Black students, I'm talking about Latinx students, I'm talking about Native American Pacific Islander. They do that because they're saying it's so rare that we have faculty of color who have doctorate degrees and we honor and respect you. And so that's our way of respecting you because we know that you've been through a whole lot of shit going through these institutions, right? Getting that degree. And so that's part of it. But when I go to conferences, I'm like, let's just call me by my first name because I'm not into Dr. Johnson. I'm Karen. You could call me Karen. So that's where I am. And when I speak to other Black women, faculty members from not only just my institution, but when I go to conferences, it's the same dynamics. They said they want a respect level in the classroom from their students because they see it as disrespectful, particularly on the undergrad level.
Yeah, but it is a very cultural thing. And, as much as Ellie's parents wanted her to be in this environment where they believed she would, gain some advantages, she is likely to come out of that experience, calling her mother Belle. Where
I don't think so.
Gio said, I don't think so.
Get that Southern backslap.
But it does begin to set up this kind of generation or cultural difference between the parents and the children who are being raised so differently. Yeah. Well, thank you. Huh?
One thing I'm not seeing in the book so far, and I'm not going to say we're not going to see it, is discussions around, because her family are kind of prominent Black folks, right? Educated Black folks. There's not discussions, so far it probably is, it's a thick book, but I haven't seen discussions around issues of social and civic advocacies for the Black community, or unless I missed that. Or
no, I haven't seen it, but you're further along than I am in the book. But I haven't seen it. But I just still think we have time to go. On the other hand, if we are in the 1980s, unless she's going to be like switching back and forth between time periods, which I think she is, as she looks at different generations of the family. But if we're going to go, progressively from the 1980s, then there ain't going to be a whole lot of advocacy to talk about, right? But if she goes back to earlier generations, that's probably where we'll see it. Yeah. Like in this chapter, where she refers to Jessie Fawcett, where Nana is saying, Miss Jessie Fawcett, you or Ailey was saying Jessie Fawcett, I don't know who said it, but Jessie Fawcett was taking tea at Nana's house. And Jessie Fawcett was, in the book, she describes Jessie as an assistant to W.E.B. Du Bois, which, she was. But she was also a writer of the Harlem Renaissance in her own right,
Right.
I was wondering why Honoré didn't, she was a writer, she was a feminist, and I was wondering why Honoré didn't flesh out the description of Jessie a little bit more. But on the other hand, whoever mouth it was coming out of, whichever character, would probably say it just like that. Miss Jessie used to take tea with Nana, and you wouldn't give the whole backstory,
Right.
So,
Yeah. Okay.
yeah. So I think we'll probably see, as we go along. Gio, you get the last word.
Okay, well, I think I'd like to share my screen and show you guys two pieces of art. One is from Bearden, and then the other one is from Catlit. And they had a lot of pieces, but I picked these two because I thought they illustrated some themes in this chapter. So let's see if I can. This first one is Bearden's The Lamp. Oh, let's see.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Can you see that?
Yeah.
And so because there's well, I assume they're related, right? They're reading a book, which is what Lydia and Ailey enjoyed, doing together. And also the theme of education, right? Making sure we pass on information and love of information to the next generation, the things that we love. And let me see. Okay, let me get the other one. Okay, and then this is Elizabeth Catlett's. Oh, can you see it?
Yes.
Okay, Elizabeth Catlett's Survivor. And I picked that because a lot of her pieces are about women and the African American experience. And I just loved the movement of this and expression of this woman's face. Surviving what? And then in this chapter, there's a lot people are surviving and how they're doing it, because it's a tradition of survival that we have. So,
wow.
Yeah. Those are my two favorite Black artists, Romain Bearden and Catlett.
Oh, cool.
Thank you for sharing that. I love those two pieces you found.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
So that's
and I loved uh, Honore's description of the Ruby Bridges, Norman Rockwell painting.
Yeah.
You know, she really puts on life on it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Those are beautiful, Gio. Send them to me.
Okay, sure. I will do that. Mhm.
Yeah, I may work them to a post some kind of way.
I know you can. I know you can.
Good.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Okay. So next week, we have
Okay. We're doing some.
permission to be excused and jingle bells, damn it.
Now that
So
is
those
okay.
so those two chapters are also connected to song 2, about the van progress. So keep that in mind. Can you stay for a minute?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm gonna look for it.
You're breaking up.
And can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Oh,
Yeah.
you were breaking up. What did you say?
Okay. Oh, I was asking Gio if she could stay for a minute, but you could stay too, Karen, if you want. But let me get back online because you know how I was telling you